This is a container train, or as the train nerds like to call it, an intermodal. Living in Utah close to the I-80 corridor, I see a ton of these trains. I've always wanted to model these, but container trains can cost as much as $60 to $80 a car, so I've decided to see if I could 3D print my own to avoid setting fire to my wallet. Luckily, I was able to find some files on Colts 3D, and I was off to the races. This is how I did it. The first thing to do with any 3D printing project is to print all the parts. I experimented with a couple free designs from Thingiverse, but this paid file was by far the best option. Same thing with the shipping containers. I actually printed a ton of containers I found on Thingiverse, and then I realized there was really no way to weight them, and usually container trains use high cubes, which are a bit taller than the standard container. So now I have all of these containers, and I have absolutely no intention to use them. Though they do look like they would make halfway decent bowling pins. 8 pins down. Strike. The windup. And another strike. Gutter ball? Fuck. Well, that was stupid. Anyways, I have no use for these, so if you want some, subscribe to my channel, send me an email, and I'll mail you a few. Printing these containers doesn't take hardly any filament. You could print 40 containers with one roll of filament. Last I checked, if you bought a container, they're like almost $10. So if you just buy a sheet of decals on eBay, print your own containers, you're gonna save a ton of money if you want a large container train. The files for the containers I used had removable doors, which is super nice for putting weights in the container. You can't add weight to the car, so being able to add weight to the container is great. Oh, that's way too much fucking weight. God, put down the crack pipe. Anyway, to finish these containers up, all I did was put some decals on it, spray some clear coat over it to kind of cement the decals on, and that was it. Now for assembling the car. This was not so easy. The plans from Colts are actually for S scale, so I had to scale them down and fit them together. Because these weren't designed as HO scale cars, there was a lot of cutting, trimming, fitting, and of course swearing that went into getting these cars together. So if you hate yourself, you will love this project. Link to the files and parts I used in the description below. On the other hand, let's talk about how cheap these cars are to make. I did the math, and with metal wheel sets, metal couplers, and the boxes needed, plus the filament for the well cars and the containers, one well car with a full load of 2 containers costs just over $12. I don't know if you've seen the price of stuff lately, but this same setup with off-the-shelf stuff would easily cost $50, probably more. So if you're looking to save some money, these cars are definitely worth the hassle. I originally bought some decals for these cars, but I'm getting pretty tired of putting these together, and I'm also really tired of editing this video. So let's go down to the layout and test these out. All right, it is test day. We're here at the Golden Spike Model Railroad Club in Salt Lake City, Utah. I brought 4 of the printed well cars as well as 8 containers to fill those well cars. The idea for today is to test the cars and make sure that they stay on the rails, they don't derail, they play nicely with each other, as well as some other cars that you can purchase off the shelf. So why don't we get these cars put on and let's have some fun. Before trying to pull these cars around the main line, I decided to do a little bit of switching first. I just wanted to make sure that they stayed on the track, they went through turnouts okay, so we used this little switch engine at the club to make sure that everything worked well. These cars didn't have any problems going through switches or being pushed in and out of yards, so we decided to mix it into a freight train that one of my buddies had brought down. You can see in these shots that the car color is a little bit off compared to some of the other well cars, but I mean, I used cheap 3D printed plastic from China, so what did you expect? This is a good time to talk about the filament choice. I chose the filament that I could find that had the closest color match, and in hindsight, I really wish that I would have found a different, higher quality filament. Though the color on this filament was similar to the colors of the well cars that I had purchased, it printed like dog shit. So if you're really going for nice print quality and a good looking car, I would recommend printing this with a higher quality PLA and then sanding it and painting it and doing all of that stuff. I'm just too lazy to do all of that, and this video is more of a proof of concept. In general, these cars ran surprisingly well. I really didn't have any issues with them. I did have some trucks that were a little bit squeaky, so I just took some of the lube that I had in my toolbox and dripped some in there, and that solved that problem. Overall, I didn't have really any derailments. The cars went around the track just fine. Everything worked out pretty well. With a little bit of effort and applying some actual decals, I think that these cars would actually look pretty good. To be completely honest, the best thing that came with the purchase files were the STLs for the 40-foot containers. These containers are worth it just by themselves. Being able to put the weight in the containers and then glue the doors on is extremely valuable. There's no way to weight the well cars themselves, so being able to have enough weight in the bottom container to make it track well is invaluable. I never tested these cars without weight in the containers, but I can tell you from experience, these cars are super light, and if you don't add any weight, I can guarantee you're gonna have major issues with derailments. And that pretty much goes for any rolling stock. In general, I would rate these cars probably a 7 out of 10. They're not great, they're not terrible, but they are super cheap. Granted, I did scale this down from an S-scale model, so I'm sure that model is great. This car just didn't scale down very well. And it should be mentioned that that's not the designer's fault. I don't think he ever designed it for somebody to be scaling it down like I did. At the end of the day, if you're trying to save some money, this car is probably a good option for you. Though things don't fit together right when you scale it down, they do go together eventually. It just takes a little bit of time and a little bit of trimming, and that's really all there is to it. Anyways, I think that's about it for this video. Thanks for watching. I've got some other HO scale content on my channel, as well as some backyard railroading stuff in the 8 scale if you want to check that out. Don't forget to hit subscribe and leave a comment if you want me to try and test something else. Until next time, try not to take your HO modeling too seriously, okay?